Nearly 100 Russian cruise missiles have been reduced to rubble as Ukraine scored a major victory. The Engels airbase, a crucial hub for Russia's missile operations, has been significantly damaged after Ukraine's daring assault. And President Vladimir Putin will be furious since this devastating blow has just made it a lot harder for him to continue his relentless attacks on Ukrainian cities and infrastructure. And we're now getting new information about just how destructive and effective that strike really was. According to Militani, Ukraine launched long-range drones in a precision attack that directly hit an ammunition stockpile on March 20, triggering a chain of massive secondary explosions. The inferno raged for hours, and the sound of 96 cruise missiles going up in flames was so intense that residents of Saratov, a Russian city over 9 miles away, reported hearing the blast. And that's not all. The Ukraine military's general staff revealed that the cruise missiles were just the start. Furthermore, strikes on aviation fuel storage sites resulted in the destruction of substantial reserves, severely impacting the Russian aggressor's ability to maintain combat operations, it said. Satellite images of the Engels base seem to confirm the sheer scale of the damage Ukraine has done. One image shows the ammunition depot Ukraine claims to have hit both before and after the March 20 strike. Before, the base looked like an industrial facility you may see, packed with grey concrete and fully functioning. After, there's a clear black border around the facility, indicating the scale of the fire Ukraine's strike caused. We can also see clear damage to many of the buildings contained within the storage facility. The Kyiv Post offers more details in its own March 27 report. It says that the Engels strike was carried out by Ukraine's Security Service, or SBU, which utilized Special Operations Forces drones to get the job done. The SBU is Ukraine's main internal security agency, making it roughly equivalent to the Central Intelligence Agency in the US. However, since Putin launched his Ukraine invasion in 2022, the SBU has switched its focus from internal security to using its intelligence gathering abilities to help the Ukraine military hit key Russian targets. In some cases, as we see with this recent Engels strike, the SBU gets involved more directly. A source within the SBU provided a handful of extra details. The SBU and its partners continue to work with surgical accuracy on key military facilities of the Russian Federation, which are absolutely legitimate targets, the unnamed source claims. Such special operation reduced the enemy's ability to terrorize Ukrainian cities with missile strikes. And that's precisely what the Engels strike did. In addition to being home to several types of Russian aircraft, including the Tu-160 and the Tu-95MS, Engels is also where Russia stores many of the Kh-55, Kh-555 and Kh-101 missiles it's used to devastate Ukraine's cities and infrastructure. And all three missiles represent a terrible threat to Ukraine. The Kh-55, which is codenamed AS-15 Kent by NATO, this weapon is an air-launched cruise missile developed in 1971 at the height of the Soviet Union. Though it was originally developed to give the Soviets an alternative means to deliver a nuclear warhead against its enemies. It travels at subsonic speeds of 581 miles per hour and has a range of around 1,550 miles, more than long enough for Russia to use it to strike any location in Ukraine. Each missile weighs a little over 2,667 pounds, with the warhead the missile carries accounting for around 900 pounds of that weight. And if Russia chooses to load its Kh-55s with nuclear warheads, it can do so with a bomb that carries a yield of up to 250 kilotons. Variants include the Kh-55SM with an extended range of 1,864 miles, and the Kh-65SE, designed for export but never sold, with a shorter range of 372 miles, making it an option for attacking Ukrainian troops on the front lines of the war if any were stored at Engels. The Kh-555, which is the Kh-55 variant that the Kyiv Post and Militani say is the most likely one to be stored at Engels, is also a subsonic cruise missile. But the Kh-555 was designed specifically to be fired by the Tu-95MS and Tu-160. You may remember that these are the two types of aircraft Russia keeps at Engels, making it almost a certainty that Kh-555s were among the missiles destroyed in the March 20 attack. It's one of Russia's more modern missiles, having entered service in the 2000s, and Army recognition says that it's become a critical component of the Russian aerial strategy. The KH-555 has several upgrades over the KH-55 that serves as its base, including an advanced guidance system and a reduced radar cross-section, the latter making it harder for Ukraine to track and shoot the missile out of the sky after it's launched. The minimized cross-section comes from the missile's clever design, which incorporates a cylindrical missile body with folding wings, tail fins, and a pointed nose. Each KH-555 can carry a conventional high-explosive fragmentation warhead weighing up to 880 pounds. And, like the KH-55, it can be armed with a nuclear warhead delivering about 200 kilotons of explosive power. Add the extended range, which matches the K-55SM at 1,864 miles, and you get one of the deadliest threats Ukraine has faced during its war with Russia. And now, the KH-555s at Engels have been destroyed. The third missile is the KH-101. Another of Russia's air-launched and nuclear-capable cruise missiles, the KH-101 is specially designed to closely hug the terrain as it hurtles towards its target. That allows it to evade aerial defense systems that might take out the KH-55 and its variants. The KH-101 is the conventional version of the missile and is capable of carrying a payload weighing 992 pounds. The nuclear-capable version is called the KH-102, though it shares the same general specifications as the KH-101. The conventional version of the missile is capable of carrying fragmentation, high explosive, and submunition warheads, making it more versatile than the other missiles Ukraine destroyed at Engels. It also has an impressive range, varying between 1,240 and 1,739 miles, depending on the missile. Again, that's more than long enough for Russia to hit practically any target in Ukraine when deploying the missile from Engels. These missile specifications demonstrate one of the reasons why Ukraine's recent Engels strike is so important. Russia's missiles offer a lethal combination of firepower and range, with one also being capable of evading anti-air defenses that have allowed them to devastate Ukraine. Now, 96 of those missiles are destroyed. But the real impact of taking out an ammunition depot at Engels goes even deeper. Take the airbase's location for example. We've touched on the range Russia's missiles can achieve, but that wouldn't mean much if they were stationed at a base in central Russia. Engels isn't one of those bases. It's about as close to the Ukraine war's front line as it's possible to get without being a border base, with the Moscow Times noting that it's just 300 miles east of Ukraine's border with Russia. That proximity contributes to Russia's ability to target practically any location in Ukraine from Engels. All one of its two 160 or two 95 MS aircraft has to do is take off, hover near or even above the base and fire. The cruise missiles do the rest of the work as they fly toward Ukraine. By the time they've reached the border, all of the missiles Ukraine destroyed have anywhere from around 900 to 1,500 miles left in the tank. We also can't discount the impact this attack has in the context of it being yet another Ukrainian strike against Putin's weapons on Russia's territory. Those strikes have become more consistent since Ukraine counter-invaded Kursk in August 2024. Previously, entering Russian territory was one of Putin's red lines. Putin even responded to both the Kursk invasion and the US permitting Ukraine to use its long-range missiles inside Russia, with a change to Russia's nuclear doctrine, allowing it to respond with nukes in such situations. Of course, Putin hasn't followed through on these nuclear threats. That means Ukraine's Engels attack hasn't just made the airbase toothless. It's also revealed, once again, that Putin is just as toothless when it comes to the nuclear threats he's made throughout his invasion. Ukraine just destroyed 96 missiles Putin could have used in a nuclear attack. The fact that he hadn't, despite having them so close to the Ukraine border, suggests that he never will. He can't now. It's also notable that this is far from the first time Ukraine has targeted Engels. As the Kyiv Independent points out in its report on Ukraine's massive missile destruction, Engels has been a consistent target for Ukraine since at least December 2022. In that month, Ukraine launched a drone attack that caused a massive explosion at the airbase. The UK called that strike one of the most strategically significant failures of force protection since Russia's invasion. And Putin didn't learn his lesson. More attacks against Engels followed between December 2022 and January 2024, with the March 20 strike in 2025 simply adding to the damage the base has already absorbed. Why does that matter? It shows us that Putin can't do a thing to protect Engels. For as much as Russia's president wants to project power near his country's border with Ukraine, he's failing. There are no protective measures at Engels that can stop Ukraine's drone assaults. And with so much ammunition now up in flames, the odds are we're going to see even more strikes against Engels sooner rather than later. If the base is toothless, now thanks to a losing key ammunition depot, it may be wiped off the map if Ukraine continues its strikes. Now, let's expand our scope. We can see what targeting Engels means in the immediate sense, but what impact will it have on the Ukraine war going forward? The Sun's YouTube show Frontline provides some details. It points out that the 96 cruise missiles were stored at Engels because Russia has been preparing for multiple assaults against Ukraine that are supposed to come during the next 2 months. Typically, those assaults utilize a combination of missiles and drones, with the former being used more sparingly than the latter. Very specifically, Ukraine said that these 96 Russian cruise missiles that they destroyed were going to be used in 3 strikes over the course of March and April, says Jerome Starkey of Frontline. The suggestion is that the Engels assault has set Russia's plans back by at least 2 months. Think about this in the context of what's happening on the peripheries of the Ukraine war right now. Prompted by US President Donald Trump, both Ukraine and Russia are working their way towards some form of ceasefire agreement. Right now, Russia wants that agreement to cover strikes on energy infrastructure and the Black Sea. Ukraine had earlier called for a ceasefire that covered all aspects of Russia's invasion. Putin's strategy during these ceasefire negotiations has been to delay as much as possible. Russia's leader believes he has the advantage in the conflict. His forces are slowly pushing Ukraine out of Kursk, with Russia believed to have recaptured around 90% of the territory it lost in August 2024. It also managed to claw around 1,609 square miles of territory from Ukraine itself. Those gains came at a massive human cost. Putin sacrificed 427,000 soldiers to make them. However, Putin doesn't care about that. He just sees the momentum that comes from this meat grinder strategy, and he wants to keep it going for as long as possible. That's why he's delaying the ceasefire for as long as possible. Ukraine's destruction of 96 of Russia's cruise missiles puts a dent in those delaying plans. Putin had hoped to use those missiles to cause even more damage to Ukraine's infrastructure before agreeing to a ceasefire. Now he can't do that. His gambit has blown up in his face, and it's his own airbase that now lies in tatters thanks to Ukraine's assaults. If he's not careful, more strikes like what we've seen in Engels will swing the momentum back in Ukraine's favour. That may be enough for Ukraine to make up the loss of leverage that results from Putin retaking Kursk. We also can't ignore the sheer scale of the missile and drone attacks Putin has used to bombard Ukraine. According to the Center for Strategic and International Studies, Russia launched 19,000 missiles, including 14,700 kamikaze attack drones at Ukraine between September 28, 2022 and December 28, 2024. More strikes have followed since, likely taking the number above 20,000 missiles and drones. But these figures show just how reliant Putin is on aerial assaults from just behind the front lines of the Ukraine war. Taking out the ammunition depot in Engels limits Russia's ability to conduct these types of attacks. And though Putin will likely attempt to restock the base over the next couple of months, that restocking only feeds into another problem the Engels strike creates for Russia as the war moves into 2025. It's running out of missiles. As part of his Frontline report, Jerome Starkey notes that he spent time at several Ukrainian research laboratories. Those labs are where Ukraine analyzes the wreckage of the missiles and drones that Russia launches at its cities and infrastructure. According to Starkey, Ukraine's technicians are so talented that they can distill the specific serial numbers of the weapons Putin is firing at their country, allowing them to discern when they were produced. Why does that matter? Starkey explains, one of the most important things that came through that was how high-value missiles and weapons like these cruise missiles were going from the factory to the front line very, very quickly. And that was a sign the Ukrainians said that Russian stockpiles were very, very thin. In other words, Putin can't afford to lose nearly 100 of his missiles in a single Ukrainian strike. Sure, Russia is producing more, but the fact that those new missiles are heading straight to places like Engels means that Putin has likely burned through the stockpiles he had before he launched his invasion. At the very least, he's burned through most of his Soviet-era Kh-55s, and he's now being forced to rely on his production lines to keep the missiles flowing. That's why it'll likely take several months for Russia to restock Engels, and those extra months open up more opportunities for Ukraine to hit the base again. Even if Ukraine waits, it knows the depths of Putin's missile crisis. It may even hold fire until more ammunition arrives at Engels before launching another drone strike to destroy it, wasting even more of Russia's time and resources. And why wouldn't it? Ukraine has hit Engels so many times at this point that it knows that Putin can do practically nothing to defend the base. Russia's struggles with the Soviet-era stockpiles it's using to attack Ukraine are nothing new. At the end of January, the Kyiv Independent reported that the Russian military had lost about 50% of its available equipment already. What's left is often in poor condition, meaning it's possible that any Soviet-era missiles Putin might think about sending to Engels now won't even work. The stockpile depletion is so bad that the outlet suggests that Russian hostility could gradually start to fade toward the end of 2025 and into 2026. Not because Putin wants it to, he just won't be able to keep his forces stocked with the weapons they need. And it's not Russia's military stockpiles that will wear out, it may be Putin himself. That's according to Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, who said in a March 27 interview that Putin will die soon. Zelensky points out to Putin's age as being a key factor in a statement he made when urging Ukraine's allies not to lift their sanctions against Russia. The statement has fueled a lot of speculation about Putin's health, according to Starkey. There's been a lot of speculation about Vladimir Putin's health. Has he been struck down with a fatal disease? Suggestions are that his hands are shaking, he's puffy-faced, Starkey says. He does point out that there's no confirmation of any of this speculation, either officially or from his Russian sources. However, it does raise an interesting thought. Maybe Putin's attempt to stall out the ceasefire could backfire because he dies. The man is already 72 after all. Just how much longer can he last while waging a high-stress invasion that he initially believed would be over in 5 days? Perhaps Putin is miscalculating, Zelensky seems to suggest. While Russia's leader delays because he thinks he has the advantage, Ukraine is attacking places like Engels to cost Putin valuable months of strikes that he can't afford to lose. So, what will this mean for the already fragile ceasefire negotiations? Ukraine's Engels attack also took out some Russian aviation fuel, along with the 96 cruise missiles, as the Ukraine Army's General Staff revealed. Putin may use that fact to claim that Ukraine has no interest in an energy infrastructure-related ceasefire. Of course, that would be hypocritical of Russia's president. He's already attacked Ukraine's energy infrastructure himself since making the promise of an immediate ceasefire to President Trump on March 18. The Engels strike may give an excuse to back out entirely, or at least continue playing for time as he tries to regain an advantage that is slowly slipping out of his fingers. But what do you think about Ukraine's devastating Engels strike? How long will it take Russia to restock, if it does at all? Do you think Ukraine will hit Engels again or turn its attention to other Russian ammunition depots? Let us know your thoughts in the comments, and remember to subscribe to The Military Show for more news and commentary on the latest Ukraine war developments. We're an independent source for unbiased information surrounding conflicts from around the globe, and we greatly appreciate your support.